Hi, this is Joy from Joy of Craft, and today I'm going to take this Dollar Tree sign and give it a little makeover with some Mod Podge and scrapbook paper. First thing I want to do here is take off all the embellishments, but you're not going to see me do that because it's a little bit higher up on the screen. Then I'm going to spray it with some Goo Gone and let the Goo Gone sit there for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll scrape at it a little bit just to get off those little tough areas. So we'll have a nice clean surface and no glitter all over the place. The great thing about Goo Gone is it wipes clean with a paper towel. There are a few little spots here that I had to scrape at, but you want a nice clean surface so your Mod Podge and your paper will adhere really well. The only thing with the Goo Gone is you need to do it in a well ventilated area. It is a little bit of a smelly product, but it does help cut the cleaning time down in half. The glitter does get a little bit on your craft mat and on your hands and things, but it does save it from being all over your floor and you vacuuming it up for weeks on end. I usually always have baby wipes on hand, and I wipe my hands to try and get any excess of the Goo Gone and the glitter, as well as the sign and your craft area, because it will make a little bit of a mess, but a lot less than anything else. Now I'm taking my sandpaper and I'm sanding everything down to make sure I don't have any ridges or excess glitter on anything. And then I wipe it down again with a baby wipe to make sure I get all the dust off. And of course, I clean up my area so when I am going to start working with the paper and the Mod Podge, I will not have glitter everywhere. I just wipe everything down. And another thing, the Goo Gone, when it does spray out, it will spray out a little bit over, and we'll have some overspray, so you do want to clean that up as well. Now I'm going to grab my now I will grab my selection of fall scrapbook papers from my stash. I found the bottom one with all the fall words on it, and I really like the colors, and I really like that they included blue in that piece, so I use that as my jumping off point. And from there, I looked through my stash to find any papers that would coordinate well with that bottom piece. Of course, I found some chevron, which I had to have. And then after that, I continued to look at different patterns and colors that would complement all of those the first two that I picked. I do like the plaid that I have right there, but I noticed it's kind of a little bit off yellow, and I was thinking I may have a little bit too much pattern that is similar with lines and things, so I do get rid of the plaid, and I am going to be picking a piece that looks to me like wheat to represent the yellow color in there. From there, I also want a little bit of bling, so I choose the blue diamond-shaped ones with the gold accents on it. I always think that a project needs a little bit of bling. Since I took the glitter off this one, I thought the foil accents would look really cute. Now I am taking my mechanical pencil and just tracing the pattern of the pumpkin on each of the pieces of the paper. The great thing about this project, it is super easy to do. You know, everybody knows how to trace. We learned that when we were in elementary school, and you just literally trace the pattern on the piece of paper, and we're going to be cutting it out in the next part. The nice thing about this is that it's great for a beginner crafter. It's not really intimidating, and really the hardest part is picking which papers you want to go onto each slot of the pumpkin. If you are a little nervous about the slot moving while you're tracing, you can take a little bit of washi tape and just tape it down onto the paper. The great thing about washi tape, it's a low tack paper that, or low tack tape, I mean, that will not rip the paper up when you pull it off. I use washi tape all the time to hold my dies down or hold a stencil down, and it'll work great for that as well. Another thing just to remember is before you start tracing everything out, is to decide beforehand which paper is going to go where on the pumpkin, because that is a big thing, because it may look a little wonky if you choose too many patterns the same on the one end, or the same colors. So it's a good idea to kind of test the waters out a little bit before you make the final decision. And finally here I am just tracing the top part, which is probably the hardest area to trace out, because you're going along kind of a curves and things like that of the pumpkin's stem. And now I'm just cutting out the parts I've traced, which is super easy. You don't have to be perfectionist about this. I usually like to make sure the pencil marks, I cut right on the pencil marks, so I don't have to go and erase the lines after. But you could do whatever you really want. You can go, if you want the paper to be a little bit longer, just go a little bit above. That's the great thing about this project. You can do what you want. And if your pattern is a little bit bigger than your sheet, you just trim it up, before you put it on, or even after you can trim it up. So that's the nice thing about that. So you're going to just see me here cut out each of the things and kind of put it together like a puzzle and see what I think about it, and arrange it up, and maybe fix a few spots there that I don't like, that I may have cut wrong or whatever. And the nice thing is the Mod Podge is going to hide anything you did wrong. That it is a great product to work with, and if you cut a little short, it really doesn't matter. If you cut too long, it really doesn't matter. Next thing, I looked at the paper and I really thought that the paper needed some distressing. So I took my close to my heart espresso ink and my Amazon makeup brushes, and I'm just literally going over the edges and putting the ink on the thing to just make it look a little bit distressed. Another great thing is that a lot of paper has a white core on it, and if you don't want that white core showing, that is using the brown ink is a good way of covering that up. Or you can use it to cover up any mistakes you have, or anything. It's a good way. It just gives the piece that next level. If you don't have any brown ink, you can use some gray ink. You could even use a little bit of one of the colors in the paper too. I wouldn't suggest black. I think that would look a little bit too dark for those papers, but sometimes black ink looks really good on that as well. So I'm just going through each of the papers and just literally, sponging on. I just try to put a little bit of ink on the sponge or on the makeup brush and just kind of sponge it off right onto it. So pretty easy. After I go through each of the pieces of the paper, I'm going to use my microfiber cloth here and just clean my brush off. You don't need any water with those brushes or anything like that. You can just use a microfiber cloth or a scrap piece of paper and clean them off that way. Now I'm going to start by deciding on what words I'm going to use for my sign. I end up using the welcome, but I also had the option of using harvest or thankful. I decide to use some outdoor blue paint to paint my sign. I like the color of it more than anything, not necessarily that it was for outdoors. As I start painting it, I realize that this is probably not going to go on really, really well. As you can tell, it's quite thin paint. So I then decide to get a darker blue chalk paint, hoping that it will be a little bit thicker, I may need less coats to put it on. But as I put it on, I realized, I kind of like the two colors mixed together. I like that little bit of darker streak through the welcome sign. And I do notice that it is a little bit thicker to go on, so it's not as thin. So I really like the mixing of the two colors together and make my own color. but I am a little worried about how streaky it is. So I take out my heat tool and I decide that I'm going to dry it to see what the actual finished product is going to look like when I'm done, and also to see what the color is, because of course when paint dries it is a definite difference in color. It will be a little bit darker. As I'm drying, I notice that you can see the metal quite a bit through it, and I like a little bit of metal showing through, but not as much. And of course, as I'm using the heat tool, I did knock my camera over a little bit, so I fixed that so you can see it a little bit better. So once I have it dry, I realize I'm gonna need at least 2 or 3 coats. So I'm showing you here again the paint that I'm using, and I've decided those are the 2 colors I'm going to mix. But I don't want to mix them to make one color. I kind of want it more of a streakiness, so you can see both colors throughout the sign. And as I put the second coat on, I do notice that it is going a lot better on the sign, or the words I mean. And I may not need 5 coats. I could maybe go with 3 coats. But what I try and do is dry it in between coats, so it will take a little bit less time, and also I can kind of see where I need to make some changes. I realize that as it's drying, that I do like the little bit of streaks of the dark blue in there, so I'm going to add a little bit more dark blue into the color mix. Right now I'm going to put the top layers of Mod Podge on. I usually like to do 2 layers, but it's fine to do 3 or 4 if that's what you feel like. Just make sure that they're thin so they'll dry quickly, and then you won't be dealing with tacky Mod Podge. So what I do is I put the first layer on, let it dry 15-20 minutes, and then I'll go in and put the second layer on. One thing you want to make sure is that you get those edges really, really well. And I go almost over the edge so you seal everything in, so nothing will make the paper lift up if it gets wet or anything like that. If you are going to be using the Mod Podge for an outside type project, since it is outside Mod Podge, remember to seal the sides and in the middles of the sign, and also to wait 72 hours before you decide to place it outside. Let it cure and set up. After I let everything cure and dry, and I put Mod Podge, I forgot, I also put Mod Podge on top of the welcome sign to seal that in, the welcome part. And I also, as you can see, I'm trying to adjust my camera, I also adhered it with Mod Podge to the sign. I'm now going to embellish everything. So I have some burlap ribbon from my stash and some Dollar Tree fall ribbon that I purchased to go with some of my crafts. I'm going to layer it here. I really like the layered look, and I thought that was really cute. And also to use the chevron ribbon to go with the chevron paper. And then I use some of the Dollar Tree felt leaves that I have, and I like the colors that they had and the shapes and sizes. So I'm using them to kind of add a little bit extra to the thing, and I'm cleaning off all my hot glue that stayed onto my craft mat. And now I put that all together, and I'm using the jute ribbon here that was on the original sign, and I put that to finish it off, and I'm going to glue that to the top here right now. And I'm done. My Dollar Tree makeover sign. This is probably one of my most favorite signs I've done. I hope you guys like it. Please give me a thumbs up if you do. And if you want to see more, I would love it if you would subscribe and hit the notification button so you know when I post. Here I'm just showing you down there where it is, and follow my blog. Thanks. Bye.